The first warning. No one in the Galactic Assembly ever forgot the first time a human said it. Now I'm actually getting annoyed. At the time, it didn't sound like much. No war drums. No threat displays. No pheromonal spikes or electromagnetic flares like most species used when escalating conflict. Just a tired, almost bored sentence from a creature that looked fragile by most standards: soft skin, no claws, forward-facing eyes that seemed more suited for curiosity than violence. Ambassador Jorvath of the Kthari Dominion had even laughed. "You are annoyed?" He'd clicked through his mandibles, the translator struggling to soften the insult. "Your colony exists on land we have legally claimed. You will vacate. Or you will be removed." The human, Commander Elias Rook, had leaned back in his chair, boots on the polished obsidian table, completely ignoring the etiquette protocols that governed every other species in the room. "Removed?" Rook repeated, scratching the stubble on his jaw. "You keep using that word." Jorvatha's compound eyes narrowed. "It is not a suggestion." "Yeah," Rook said, glancing around the chamber. "We figured." There had been murmurs among the other delegates. Humans were new, barely a century into interstellar politics, and already they were making enemies. Not because they were aggressive, but because they refused to act afraid. And fear was currency in the galaxy. "You misunderstand your position," Jorvath continued. "The Kthari have crushed empires older than your species has had written language." Rook nodded slowly, as if genuinely impressed. "That's so?" "Yes." "Then you probably know how this goes," Rook said, his voice dropping just slightly. "You push. We push back. Someone makes a mistake. Then everything gets messy." Jorvatha's tone hardened. "There will be no pushback. Your forces are insignificant." Rook exhaled through his nose, like a man dealing with a stubborn child. "All right," he said. "Let me try this one more time." He leaned forward, boots hitting the floor with a dull thud. The casual laziness strained out of him, not replaced with anger, but something colder. Something sharper. The translator hesitated for a fraction of a second before delivering his words. "Now I'm actually getting annoyed." The chamber went quiet. No one could explain why. There was no biological trigger, no measurable shift in pheromones or radiation. But something in the room changed. Even species that didn't rely on instinct felt it, a subtle tightening in the air, like the moment before a storm breaks. Jorvath scoffed. "Is that a threat?" Rook smiled. "No," he said. "It's a warning." 3 cycles later, the Kthari Dominion lost an entire battle fleet. Not in open combat. Not in a glorious clash of weapons and strategy. They just vanished. 47 warships, each capable of sterilizing planets, went dark within the same minute. No distress signals. No debris. No signs of engagement. Gone. The Dominion initially assumed sabotage. Internal betrayal. It was the only logical explanation. Until the recordings started surfacing. Fragments, mostly. Corrupted data recovered from automated probes drifting near the last known coordinates of the fleet. The footage showed Kthari ships holding formation, scanning an empty sector. Then a human voice, calm, almost conversational, cut through every channel simultaneously. "You were told to leave." The Kthari commander demanded identification. Threatened retaliation. Standard protocol. The voice didn't respond. Instead, space itself seemed to fold. That was the only word analysts could agree on. It wasn't a warp signature. It wasn't a known form of cloaking or dimensional phasing. It was as if reality had been creased like paper, and something stepped out from between the folds. The first Kthari ship didn't explode. It collapsed. Pulled inward, crushed into a singular point before snapping out of existence. The second ship fired. The third tried to jump. Neither action mattered. One by one, the fleet was erased, not destroyed, not damaged, but removed from the equation entirely. And through it all, that same human voice continued, almost bored. "I was hoping you'd listen." By the time the recordings ended, There were no ships left. No debris. No survivors. Just silence. Back in the assembly, panic spread faster than any war declaration ever had. "What weapon is this?" one delegate demanded. "Gravitational manipulation?" another guessed. "Impossible," a third insisted. "The energy requirements." But Commander Rook wasn't there to answer. He had already left. And that was when the second message arrived. Not to the Kthari. To everyone. It came through every network simultaneously, bypassing security protocols that were considered unbreakable. A simple transmission. No encryption. No theatrics. Just Rook's face, looking slightly more tired than before. "We didn't start this," he said. "We didn't want this. But if you keep pushing, if you keep assuming we'll roll over because we smile and negotiate, then you're going to keep learning the same lesson." He paused, as if choosing his next words carefully. "Humans are patient," he continued. "We'll talk things out. We'll compromise. We'll even take a hit if it keeps the peace." His expression hardened. "But there's a line." The screen flickered for a moment. "And when we cross it," Brooks said quietly, "we stop being nice." The transmission ended. Across the galaxy, military leaders began running simulations. None of them liked the results. Because every model came to the same conclusion. The Kthari hadn't lost a battle. They had triggered something. And whatever it was, it hadn't even tried very hard yet. The line they shouldn't have crossed. The galaxy did what it always did when faced with something it didn't understand. It pretended it wasn't afraid. Officially, the disappearance of the Kthari fleet was labeled an anomaly. A statistical impossibility. A one-time event caused by experimental human technology that could not be replicated at scale. Unofficially, every major power doubled its defense budget within a single cycle. The smaller species, the ones who survived by reading danger early, didn't bother with politics. They rerouted trade lanes away from human space. They recalled ambassadors. They issued quiet advisories. If a human tells you they're getting annoyed, you leave. But empires don't survive by backing down. They survive by convincing themselves they're still in control. The Vraxian collective learned that lesson the hard way. Unlike the Kthari, the Vraxians didn't rely on brute force. They were strategists. Economists. Masters of indirect warfare. If you couldn't beat an enemy outright, you strangled them, cut off supply chains, isolate allies, collapse their infrastructure until surrender became the only rational option. And humans, for all their unpredictability, were still dependent on logistics. Or so the Vraxians believed. They never attacked Earth. That would have been suicidal. Instead, they targeted the edges. Outposts. Mining colonies. Listening stations scattered along the outer human territories. Places just valuable enough to matter, but not enough to justify full-scale retaliation. At first, it was subtle. Cargo ships delayed. Communications disrupted. Entire shipments lost in transit. Nothing that could be directly traced back to the collective. Then the disappearances started. A research station on the edge of the Perseus Arm went dark. No distress call. No wreckage. Just gone. 2 weeks later, a convoy carrying medical supplies to a frontier colony failed to arrive. Then a civilian transport, families, mostly, vanished mid-jump. That's when the humans started asking questions. That's when Commander Rook showed up again. Not in the assembly this time. He appeared on a secure Vraxian network that, according to every known law of physics and encryption, should have been impossible to access. The Vraxian high strategist, Threxel, was in the middle of a council session when the screens flickered. Rook's face replaced the tactical displays. He looked tired. Not angry. Not yet. Just tired. "We need to talk," Rook said. The chamber erupted in overlapping signals, commands, security protocols firing off in every direction. None of it mattered. The human was already inside their systems. Threxel raised a limb, silencing the chaos. "Human," the strategist said, voice cold and precise. You are trespassing on sovereign. Yeah, sovereignty, Rook interrupted. We're past that. His eyes scanned the chamber, as if he could actually see them through the screen. 3 stations, he said. 1 convoy. 1 civilian transport. Threxel didn't react. Tragic losses, the strategist replied. The frontier is unpredictable. Rook nodded slowly. Right, he said. Unpredictable. For a moment he said nothing. Just stared. Then he sighed. You know, we gave you an out, Rook continued. After the Kthari. We figured everyone would take the hint. Maybe dial things back. Stop testing boundaries. Threxel's tone sharpened. We do not respond to intimidation. Rook actually chuckled at that. Intimidation? He said. No. That wasn't intimidation. He leaned closer to the screen. That was restraint. The temperature in the room seemed to drop, psychosomatic perhaps, but every Vraxian present felt it. We know it was you, Rook said, voice quiet now. We've got data, trajectories, intercepted chatter. Hell, one of your contractors sold you out for a better deal. A pause. This is the part where you deny it, he added. Maybe stall for time. Maybe try to figure out what we can actually prove. Threxel remained perfectly still. So go ahead, Rook said. Deny it. The silence stretched. Then, slowly, Threxel spoke. Even if your accusations were correct, the strategist said, you lack the capacity to respond. Your forces are spread thin. Your allies are distant. And you have already demonstrated reluctance to escalate. Rook closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, something had changed. Not rage. Not even anger. Just clarity. Yeah, he said softly. That sounds about right. He nodded once, as if confirming something to himself. Okay. Threxel tilted its head slightly. Okay? Rook exhaled. Now I'm actually getting annoyed. The connection cut. For exactly 7 minutes, nothing happened. The Vraxian Council resumed operations, though with a noticeable edge of unease. Security audits intensified. Fleets were placed on standby. Contingency plans were reviewed. But no attack came. No fleets appeared. No systems failed. And slowly, cautiously, the collective began to relax. Maybe the human was bluffing. Maybe the Kthari incident really had been a fluke. Maybe. The first Vraxian core world went dark mid-sentence. Not a blackout. Not a system failure. It just stopped. Every signal. Every transmission. Every life sign. Gone. At first, they thought it was a communication error. Until the second world vanished. Then the third. Panic spread through the collective like a contagion. Entire planets were being erased, not destroyed, not invaded, but removed with surgical precision. No debris fields. No energy signatures. Just empty space where billions of lives had existed moments before. And then the message came. Not from Rook. From something else. A voice that wasn't quite human, layered, distorted, as if multiple versions of the same person were speaking at once. You were given warnings. The transmission forced its way into every Vraxian system, every private channel, every neural interface. You mistook patience for weakness. Images flickered across the screens, snapshots of the missing colonies. Human civilians. Families. Children. You took from us, the voice continued. So we will take from you. Threxel tried to respond, to open a channel, to negotiate. Nothing worked. The voice didn't care. This is not war, it said. Another world vanished. This is correction. By the time the transmission ended, 6 core worlds were gone. Not conquered. Not destroyed. Erased. And deep within what remained of the Vraxian collective, a realization took root, cold, absolute, and irreversible. The Kthari had been a warning. They had been the demonstration. The Vraxians were the lesson. And somewhere, far beyond their reach, Commander Elias Rook sat in silence, staring at a screen filled with casualty reports, human and alien alike. He didn't look victorious. He didn't look satisfied. He just looked done. Because the worst part wasn't what humanity had done. It was how easily they'd done it. And how much worse it could still get. What humans keep locked away. There is a moment, rare, fleeting, when even monsters hesitate. For humanity, that moment lasted exactly 12 minutes. That was how long the attack stopped after the 6th Vraxian world vanished. Long enough for the galaxy to breathe again. Long enough for the surviving Vraxian leadership to gather what remained of their command structure and attempt something no empire had ever willingly done. They asked for mercy. The message was fragmented, panicked, stripped of all the calculated precision that had once defined the collective. We concede all disputed territories, all economic claims, all hostilities cease immediately. There was a pause in the transmission, something breaking, something organic pushing through the machine-perfect cadence of their species. Please! Across human space, the message was received, analyzed, verified. And then, nothing. No response. No acknowledgement. For the rest of the galaxy, it looked like silence. But inside a classified network buried deeper than any civilian system could ever reach, humanity was arguing with itself. Not politicians. Not diplomats. Soldiers. Old ones? The kind that had seen what happened when humans went too far, and what it cost to come back from it. Commander Elias Rook stood at the center of the room, surrounded by projections of the damage already done. 6 Vraxian core worlds gone. Billions erased. Entire sectors destabilized. And hovering just beneath that. Options. Dozens of them. More worlds. Faster execution. Total collapse of the collective within hours. Or something slower. Something worse. They targeted civilians. One of the admirals growled. Families. You saw the reports. You saw the footage. I did, Brooks said quietly. Then why are we even discussing this? Another snapped. They made their choice. Rook didn't answer immediately. Instead, he brought up a different set of data. Older. Buried. Forgotten on purpose. Do you know why we don't use this technology openly? He asked. No one replied. We didn't invent it for them. Rook continued. We invented it for us. That got their attention. A flick of his hand, and the projection shifted. Earth. Not as it was now, but as it had been during one of its darker centuries. Wars. Firestorms. Cities reduced to ash. We were very good at killing each other, Brooks said. Creative, efficient, relentless. Another shift. Simulations. Early prototypes of the same weapon that had erased the Kthari fleet. Crude, unstable, but unmistakably the same principle. We called it the fold engine, he said. At first, it was just a theory. A way to manipulate localized space-time. Move faster. Hide better. Maybe even fix some of the damage we'd done to our own world. He paused. Then someone realized you could weaponize it. The room went quiet. Rook didn't need to explain further. They all understood. If you can fold space, he said, you can collapse it. Remove something from existence entirely. No explosion. No radiation. No mess. Perfect weapon, one of the admirals murmured. Rook shook his head. No, he said. Perfect mistake. Another flick. A classified designation appeared across the screen. Project Silence Fall. We ran simulations, Rook continued. Tested it in controlled environments. Limited scale. Every time, the same result. The projection zoomed in. Not on destruction. On aftermath. Instability. Residual distortions. Tiny fractures in reality that didn't heal properly. At small levels it was manageable, Brooks said. Localized anomalies. Nothing we couldn't contain. He looked around the room. But at scale. No one spoke. They didn't need to. Because they were already seeing it. The current data. The Vraxian sectors. The growing inconsistencies in long-range scans. Space wasn't behaving the way it should. Each time we use it, Brooke said, we don't just remove a target. We weaken the structure around it. One of the older generals leaned forward, voice low. How bad? Rook met his gaze. Bad enough that we locked it away, he said. Buried the research. Swore we'd never use it again. A bitter smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. Guess how well that worked? Silence. Heavy. Suffocating. So what are you saying? The First Admiral asked. We stop. After everything they've done? Rook didn't answer right away. Instead, he pulled up the latest scans. The edges of former Vraxian space weren't stable. Not visibly. Not to the naked eye. But the instruments didn't lie. Tiny fluctuations. Gravitational inconsistencies. Signals that bent in ways they shouldn't. The early signs of something going very, very wrong. They crossed the line. The Admiral pressed. You said it yourself? I did, Rook agreed. Then finish it. Rook closed his eyes. For a moment, he looked older than he had any right to be. We already did, he said. That was when the alert hit. Not from human systems. From everywhere. Every sensor. Every probe. Every deep space observatory across multiple species lit up at once. Something had just changed. Not in Vraxian space. Beyond it. Far beyond it. A region of the galaxy that had been empty for as long as anyone had been mapping the stars. Uncharted, unremarkable, ignored. Until now. Get me visuals, Brooke snapped. The projection shifted. At first, it looked like a glitch. Stars bending. Not moving. Bending. As if something massive, something impossibly massive, was distorting the fabric of space around it. No, one of the scientists whispered. That's not gravitational. They stopped. Because the data updated. And the truth hit all at once. It wasn't something in space. It was something affecting space. From the outside. Rook felt his stomach drop. How long? He asked. Unknown, the technician replied. It wasn't there before. It just appeared. Another update. Closer scans. The distortion wasn't random. It was patterned. Structured. Like something pressing against a barrier. Testing it. Tell me that's not what I think it is, the Admiral said, voice tight. No one answered. Because everyone in the room was thinking the same thing. Every use of the fold engine had weakened reality just a little more. Created tiny fractures. Hairline cracks. And now, something on the other side had noticed. The distortion pulsed. Once. Twice. Then, for a fraction of a second, something became visible within it. Not a ship. Not a fleet. Something else. Something that didn't belong. The feed cut out. Not because of interference. Because the sensors themselves stopped responding. Overloaded. Rook stared at the blank screen, his mind racing. The Vraxians. The attacks. The retaliation. All of it suddenly felt smaller. Irrelevant. Because for the first time since this all began, humanity wasn't the scariest thing in the galaxy anymore. And as the emergency channels lit up with panicked transmissions from a dozen different species, one thought settled in Rook's mind, cold and unshakable. They hadn't just crossed a line. They had broken something. And whatever was coming through that crack wasn't going to care who started it. When the galaxy heard humanity mean it, the first thing that came through the fracture wasn't a ship. It was silence. Not the normal absence of sound. Space had always been that, but something deeper. A suffocating stillness that crawled through sensors, through signals, through living minds. Entire listening arrays went dead, not from damage, but from refusal, like the instruments themselves chose not to perceive what was there. Then the stars started going out. Not exploding. Not collapsing. Just gone. One by one, like someone erasing points from a map. Across every surviving network, panic detonated. The Vraxian remnants forgot their pride. The Kthari survivors forgot their vengeance. Even the oldest empires, those who had seen civilizations rise and fall like tides, stopped pretending they understood anything anymore. Because this wasn't war. This wasn't strategy. This was something else entirely. Something older. Something that had been waiting. Commander Elias Rook didn't waste time. Broadcast to all channels, he ordered. No encryption. No filters. Everyone hears this. The room hesitated. You're sure? One officer asked. Rook didn't look away from the expanding distortion on the screen. They need to know what we did, he said. And what comes next? The transmission went live. Across the galaxy, billions watched as a single human, tired, unshaven, eyes hollow but steady, stepped into frame. We were wrong, Rook said. No theatrics. No pride. Just truth. We thought we could control it. Thought we could use it like any other weapon, point it, fire it, clean up the mess after. Behind him, the projection shifted, showing the fracture growing, stretching like a wound across the fabric of space. We didn't understand what we were cutting into. The distortion pulsed again. Closer now. Larger. Shapes moved within it, not clearly, not fully, but enough to trigger instincts that no species could suppress. Ancient fear. Prey recognizing something that had never needed to hunt before. We broke something fundamental, Rook continued. And now it's breaking back. A pause. Then his tone changed. Not louder. Not angrier. Just final. So here's the part where we fix it. The transmission cut. And for the first time since the crisis began, humanity stopped reacting. They started moving. Every human fleet, military, civilian, classified, changed course simultaneously. Ships that had never been publicly acknowledged emerged from dark space. Old war platforms powered up for the first time in decades. Entire stations detached from orbit, revealing weapon systems that had been hidden in plain sight. Even the other species noticed something strange. Humans weren't evacuating. They were advancing. Straight toward the fracture. Are they insane? One alien commander whispered, watching the feed. No, another replied, voice trembling. They're committed. At the center of it all, a formation began to take shape. Not a defensive line. Not a blockade. A pattern. Precise. Calculated. Built around the expanding tear in reality itself. And at the heart of that formation, a single ship. Small by comparison. Almost insignificant. The HES Resolute. Rook stood on its bridge, staring at the distortion now filling half the viewport. It was worse up close. The shapes inside weren't just shapes anymore, they were movements. Intent. Pressure against a boundary that was already failing. How long? He asked. Minutes, the engineer replied. Maybe less. Rook nodded. Good, he said. Plenty of time. A nervous laugh rippled through the crew. It died quickly. Signal all ships, Rook continued. Initiate Phase 2. Across the fleet, the response was immediate. Energy levels spiked, not outward, not as weapons fire, but inward. Every ship began feeding power into something deeper, something older than any single vessel. The fold engine. Not as a weapon this time. As a lock. We were never supposed to use it like this, the engineer muttered. Rook allowed himself a small, humorless smile. Yeah, he said. We weren't supposed to use it at all. The distortion surged. For a moment, the barrier thinned completely. And something looked back. Not eyes. Not a face. But awareness. Vast. Unfathomable. Hungry. Several crew members collapsed instantly. Others screamed. Blood trickled from noses, ears, places that had no business bleeding. Hold it together! Rook barked. We're not done yet! The ships aligned. The pattern completed. And for the first time since humanity had unleashed the fold engine as a weapon, they used it correctly. Space didn't fold. It healed. Not cleanly. Not perfectly. But enough. The fracture resisted, violently. The thing on the other side pushed back, testing the closing seam, searching for weakness. Rook gripped the console, knuckles white. Come on, he muttered. You don't get this one. The fleet strained. Ships began to fail, one by one, systems overloading, hulls cracking under stresses they were never meant to endure. But the line held. Because humans were very, very good at one thing: enduring past the point where anything else would break. The distortion shrank. Slowly. Painfully. Until, with a final, violent pulse, it sealed. The stars stopped disappearing. The silence lifted. And for the first time in what felt like an eternity, the galaxy could breathe again. But the cost. Half the human fleet was gone. Not destroyed. Consumed. Burned out holding the line. The Resolute drifted at the center of it all, systems barely functional, crews shaken but alive. Rook sank back into his chair, staring at the now empty space where the fracture had been. Status? He asked hoarsely. Sealed, the engineer confirmed. For now. For now, Rook repeated. He nodded slowly. Good enough. Hours later, a final transmission went out. Short. Unadorned. Every species received it. Every leader watched it. Rook appeared again, older now somehow. Heavier. We're done playing nice, he said. No anger. No threat. Just certainty. You saw what happens when we're pushed too far, he continued. You saw what happens when we push back. A brief pause. And you saw what it costs. His eyes hardened. So understand this clearly. He leaned forward, just slightly. If a human ever looks at you, and calmly says, a beat. Now I'm actually getting annoyed. The silence stretched. Then, you leave. The transmission ended. And across the galaxy, no one laughed. No one argued. No one tested it. Because now they understood. That sentence wasn't a threat. It wasn't even a warning. It was the last mercy humanity ever offered. And the next time, there might not be anything left to save.